Thank you. Commissioner Zuber, who's here tonight?
Let's call the roll. I don't see Commissioner Charia, so I'm going to say he's not.
He had given prior notice that he would be absent this evening.
Thank you. Commissioner Eggenberger,
Yes, good evening.
Commissioner Foster,
Good evening.
evening. Commissioner Okan,
Here.
Commissioner Singh.
Here.
Just made it in time. Commissioner Watkins.
Here.
Commissioner Weber.
Here.
Commissioner Zuber here, and Chairman Green.
I am here.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. And of course, we have our community planner, Patrick Sloan, and our attorney, Sarah Gibbons. And welcome to you all tonight, and welcome to those who ultimately will see this on tape through cable. Let's see. We had minutes July, well, our last meeting was July 25th.
That's correct. The deadline for having the minutes done was just after we had sent the packet out. So the July 25th minutes were just finalized after this packet went out. So
Okay, so
we'll see these
yeah,
on our next
month.
meeting.
Okay. But we did have a meeting July 11th, and there are minutes associated with that. Do I hear a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved. Support.
Don't fight over it now. All right, we have a motion to approve the minutes of July 11th by Commissioner Okan and support by Commissioner Weber. Any further discussion? By voice vote, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Let's see, we've got an agenda tonight of what, six items? Anything late to add from staff?
No changes.
Nothing? Okay. Anything from the commission that we need to add? Hearing none, seeing none? Do I hear a motion to accept tonight's agenda as
So moved.
listed?
Sorry.
Okay.
So moved.
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Commissioner Zuber to support tonight's agenda and, I'm sorry, to accept tonight's agenda and support by Commissioner Eggenberger. Voice vote, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Excuse me.
Okay, moving right along. Any late communications, anything that needs to be discussed that went to staff?
No additional communications. I had sent an email to the planning commissioners about a public comment that had been received for the medical office special land use, as well as a staff comment on that public comment. And then we had also sent along some materials that were emailed by Redwood that were not in the packet, but had arrived through email, so we forwarded those on.
All right, so in compliance with open meetings rules, we're going to open the floor to anyone who would like to speak pretty much about anything. It doesn't have to be tonight's agenda. In fact, it's better that you don't, because we're going to get into tonight's agenda. But if you have anything else that you'd like to speak, now is your time to do that. And we would ask that you go up to the podium, and there's a card, I believe, to fill out, and give us your name and address, and tell us, you have about 3 minutes or so to tell us what you want to say. Quiet crowd.
Oh, no, we're not into the agenda yet.
All right?
Going once.
No? Okay, all right, let's move on. Our first agenda item tonight is a medical office. We're considering a special land use for this on property which is located at the northeast corner of Haggerty and Warren. The proposed use is a medical office. Patrick, could you give us more detail than that?
Sure, thank you. The project sponsor proposes to occupy the existing building at 6840 North Haggerty Road for a medical office use. Specifically, the site is located at the northeast corner of Warren Road and Haggerty Road and is in the LI Light Industrial District. The current and previous use of the building has been administrative office, and the building was originally developed as an office building. The administrative office, professional office, those are principal permitted uses in the LI district, so the current and previous uses did not require special land use approval by the township. However, medical offices are special land uses in the LI district. So to convert the building to medical office or to allow any medical office in the building does require special land use by review and public hearing by the Planning Commission and a recommendation to the Board of Trustees, and the Board of Trustees has the final vote on whether to approve the medical office special land use. There are some items on the site where we do recommend some additional improvements. Those include assuring that the landscaping and screening still meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance. There's a previous landscape plan that was previously approved, and the site will either have to be consistent with that plan, or there may be a new landscape plan depending on what kind of changes take place on the site. But right now, there are no exterior changes that are proposed on the site. This is just something that would have to comply with the ordinance. So if plant material has to be replaced, the township would administer that through the reoccupancy process, if not before. For lighting, we recommend a photometric plan that it be updated on the plans to show that the site complies with the zoning ordinance for lighting. For the dumpster enclosure, when the site was originally approved in 2002, I think the standard was for a 6-foot-high wall, which is what the enclosure is built to. Since then, the ordinance has been amended to require an 8-foot-high wall for dumpster enclosures, and we recommend that that enclosure be increased to 8 feet in height. The last item that I want to note before going into the special land use standards is the parking. The approved plan in 2002 had 61 parking spaces. If the entire building were to be used for medical office, which has a higher number of required spaces than administrative office, then the number of required parking spaces would be 68. So if the entire site is used for medical office, it's 7 spaces short of what the requirement is in the zoning ordinance. The applicant has asked for a modification of the parking to lower the parking for the medical office down to 61 spaces, which would result in no parking space changes from the original approved plan. We reviewed the parking generation manual from the Institute of Transportation Engineers and found that the weekday parking demand for a similar size medical or dental office building in a suburban environment, the average parking demand is about 44 spaces. So we believe that the number of spaces of 61 is sufficient to accommodate the use, and we recommend that the Planning Commission approve a modification to permit the existing 61 spaces for the proposed medical office use. Finally, we've reviewed the special land use standards of section 27.03C of the zoning ordinance, and I won't go through each and every standard, but in reviewing the standards, we find that the proposed use complies and meets those standards that are in the special land use criteria of the zoning ordinance. Oftentimes, medical office use is located in light industrial areas, adjacent to light industrial areas. In this case, it's surrounded by the public road right-of-way and administrative offices and religious land use to the north and to the west. So a medical office is compatible with those surrounding land uses. So with that, our recommendation is approval of the special land use for a medical office on the subject parcel, including a modification to the number of required parking spaces, subject to the conditions noted in our review letter, and subject to all state, county, and township requirements. And with that, we'll be happy to take any questions.
Okay, now, this, because it's a special land use, this is a public hearing, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we need to open the public hearing. Do I hear-
So moved.
Support. All right, we've got a motion to open the public hearing by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Okan. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the public hearing is open. Do we have a project sponsor, Patrick?
We do.
Okay, sir, would you want to come up and add anything that Patrick has said?
Good evening, and thank you for having us here tonight. Actually, we want to start that with the extra help that we've been having from the planning department and the township in this project. They've been helping through the whole process. We submitted, and it's fine. I mean, this project was started, actually, I designed it, the building maybe 15 years ago, and it's nice to come back and do it for the medical, for a group. All the partners are here tonight, and they're very excited about the project. They like the location, and we feel like it will be great building for the medical center. Definitely, we are planning to kind of meet all the requirements that the planning department is asking for. Some of them is the landscaping, the photometric. If any changes will happen for lighting in the site, we will be submitting new photometric. We will be adding the 8 feet, make the dumpster 8 feet high. It's now 6 feet, so we're going to go to 8 feet. And we're going to meet the requirement that having the top part is limestone, like usually it's required at the township. And we're very excited to be here and to ask your help to kind of give us the ability to have a special use and make everybody happy in the process.
Okay, welcome.
And I'll answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
With that, we're going to go to the audience and find out if there's any audience comments or questions for either the township or for the project sponsor. Nobody?
Close the public hearing, sir.
Okay.
Support.
All right, we've got a motion to close the public hearing by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Weber. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're going to start with Commissioner Eggenberger and find out if there are any comments or concerns. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to go all the way to the end. I forgot Commissioner Watkins was here. Commissioner Watkins, we'll start with you.
Thank you so much. And assuming you're the architect and the developer you represent the developer. Quickly, the parking requirement, I think the standard that we talked about was for medical use was roughly a little bit under 40 for standard use in this case. And I wanted to make sure that the parking variance, is there a parking variance process that needs to happen prior to us giving our approval?
The Planning Commission has the discretion to lower or increase the parking standard. So that's something that gives the Planning Commission discretion without having to get a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So the Planning Commission can modify that requirement by
Great.
vote.
If I can follow up, do we know anything, do we have any more clarity on use, the specific?
Actually, the use here, the group is coming is Southeast Michigan ear, nose, and throat. It's just doctors. They mainly now they're going to be taking half of the buildings, around 6,000 square feet, and the rest of the tenant in the building are staying there. So whoever is in the building, they're staying. But for now, we like to kind of take special use for the whole building to be medical, and we want your blessing to make it happen. But the only thing is we're moving now is 6,300 only for that building that it's empty right now. So.
Yeah, I think I heard 6,000 square feet, roughly.
Around 6,000 to 7,000 square feet. That's what the area that it's not full right now. We're going to use it for that medical center.
Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Eggenberger.
I have no questions, thank you, looks good.
Commissioner Zuber.
I don't have any questions either.
Okay. The questions I have stem from the tenant spaces, and maybe Patrick, you can answer this, because how can we impose any kind of parking restrictions or limitations when we don't know what the tenants are going to be? In other words, how do we do that if there are 4 tenant spaces? First of all, I assume that they would, by necessity, be medical tenants.
Actually, what we're doing is the one on the side, the empty space, we're putting medical. The other 4 existing tenants, they're just regular offices. So, but if they're staying, the owners want them to be there, and they're just office use. So there's no industrial use in this building. But in case if they leave in the future, we want the ability to be able to have some maybe dentist or medical office in this building and that for empty spaces. And what maybe Patrick was saying that because of the number of the parking, 61 parking is more than enough to meet the requirement for all this building to be medical.
Okay.
So we're asking here for that 7 extra parking that to be kind of given us credit for it so we can have the whole building as medical in the future. But for now, we're only taking half of it and we're keeping the tenant and the other half.
But it brings to mind an interesting question. So we grant special land use of medical office building, then there's no possibility of anything outside of that realm? I mean, he's talking about regular office use, and I assume that that would be an acceptable use, but are there any other limitations that puts in that prevents future tenants from not complying?
Not as it's proposed. As the applicant noted, the special land use is for the entire site for medical office. So right now, the plan would be roughly half-half medical office, administrative office. But in the future, if they ever went 100% medical, they would be covered under the proposed special land use. And if the parking modification is granted, it would be covered under that as well. With a medical office use, it's a pretty broad use. It's basically any kind of outpatient medical type of use. It can include dentists, ENTs, anything related to outpatient.
But if they allowed an accountant to open up a space there, that would be acceptable also?
Yes, administrative office, professional office, business office, those are permitted uses in the light industrial, and they can use different suites for different office types of uses.
That's all I have.
And that would be better for the site because they require less parking, so.
Commissioner Weber?
I have a couple questions, and probably they're more directed to Patrick than they are the petitioner. First of all, the letter that we got today about this use, what prompted that letter? I mean, why was there a thought that this was going to some medical marijuana use?
That I don't know. I think that letter was from one of the tenants in the building, and the general description of the use is that it's medical office in general, so it covers a lot. And sometimes, not just here, but in many communities that I've worked in, sometimes people will see medical office without specificity, like we didn't put in the notice, ENT doctors, or specify which medical professions. We just said medical office. And in many communities now, with the medical marijuana laws where they are, some people think that a medical office is a kind of blanket approval that would allow medical marijuana. And one of the things I noted to the member of the public who had commented, as well as to the Planning Commission, is that Canton Township has not opted into medical marijuana uses, so nobody could open up a medical marijuana office in the township because the township hasn't opted in, and if someone tried to occupy one without prior approval, we would enforce the ordinances. So they would not be able to do that type of use.
Sure, something wasn't going on we weren't aware of or something. Getting back to the parking, I noticed that the Life Church building, is that the one that has the for sale sign on and it says sold on, or is that this building?
The one to just north of them?
Yeah.
I don't know if that has sold or not.
Well, it has a sold sign on it. It has
Okay.
for some time. But, so I take it that there's been no submission or anything about what use might go into that building that could impact the parking of this building then?
Nothing that comes to mind. I can look through our records to see if anyone's come in with a zoning compliance for that address. They do have a common drive between the two sites, so for access management, that won't change. I don't know of any, I'm not aware of any formal shared parking agreement, but one of the conditions basically is that if this site becomes overparked, they would just have to build more parking on the site, which there's some room in some areas to do that, or they could come up with a shared parking agreement with their neighbor to the north.
Okay. One last thing I thought of, you're southeast ear, nose, and throat, or southeast Michigan ear, nose, and throat. Are you moving out of the building?
No, they're there. They have two different locations, and
You're still going to be in the Beaumont building on Canton Center, and
Run up.
I know you because my mom's a patient of your facility, so.
We're not leaving the area. We've been here for about 14 years.
Right.
And me and my two partners have been practicing here for 14 years, and we need more space.
Okay.
And that's what we're looking for, but we still
you're-
like Canton.
But you're still staying up on Canton Center Road, too?
No plan of leaving that yet.
Okay.
But in the long term, into the new building and using up a larger space, yes, but there won't be any closure period where we won't be providing service. there'll be most likely a lot of overlap, as we maybe have 2 offices open for a little period. But ultimately, we'll have a bigger, nicer office to handle more patients.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Okun.
Nothing really, other than why the doctor was up there. I will say that last week I visited your place twice for the first time, and very professional, friendly. Everybody was terrific. It was great because obviously I was in the need of a new ear, nose, and throat doctor, so I tried you out, and it was great. And it is a little cramped, so I'm glad to see that you were moving into a bigger area. So
That's why we're doing that.
welcome, and thanks for being part of the community.
I appreciate that. Like I said, we've been here for 14 years, and we like the community. Wonderful people. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I got.
Commissioner Foster?
You, Commissioner Weber actually asked my question, but to Patrick, were you able to respond to the resident who had the concern?
Yes, I did let the resident know that a medical marijuana use would not be permitted on the site. It's not covered in medical office, and Canton Township is not a community that's opted in to allow those types of uses.
Commissioner Singh?
No questions, thank you.
Any other comments? Otherwise, are there any motions out there?
Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend approval of the special land use for a medical office use on parcel number 046-99-0002-012 at 6840 North Haggerty Road, as the special request meets the special land use criteria of the Canton Township zoning ordinance, subject to the following conditions. Condition number 1, approval of a modification to the number of required parking spaces to 61 pursuant to section 4.01, subsection C6 of the zoning ordinance, provided that any parking demands over 61 spaces must be accommodated by either expanding the parking lot in accordance with the requirements of the zoning ordinance or obtaining approval of a shared parking agreement with the office use to the north in accordance with section 4.01, subsection B5 of the zoning ordinance. And number 2, increasing the height of the dumpster walls to 8 feet and including a limestone or similar looking cap on top of the walls pursuant to section 2.14 of the zoning ordinance. And number 3, compliance with all state, county, and township requirements. Support.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Hagenberger. Any further discussion on that motion?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question to the township attorney. Just so we don't get ourselves in trouble again, do we have to do findings of fact on this like we have to do in the zoning, or, because special land use has a list of criteria that we have to find that they meet and that sort of thing?
So the motion did include a reference to the zoning ordinance that requires those considerations. However, if you did make findings of fact related to one or more of them, that wouldn't be harmful, and it would help you in the event that there is any sort of challenge. I think it's probably unlikely in this case that there would be any sort of challenge to this use, but it would always be best to add findings related to a special land use.
And can the motion be amended to just generally say we accept the petitioner's declaration of those items that are asked for a special land use? I don't know how you'd wordsmith that, but is that acceptable to just generally say, well, we accept the petitioner's reasoning?
I think you've sort of done that already in the motion that you
In the motion?
have.
Okay.
So, I mean, the risk is low that this
Okay.
will ever be challenged. In the event that you do have a use before you that seems to be highly contested or controversial, you will always want to make findings that are specific to that subsection C.
Well, to Commissioner Weber's point, and I'm glad he brought it up, because of that, I just thought maybe we might want to get into a pattern of that kind of thing, even on an accepted motion like this. I could understand even more if we denied it, but if it's under approval, do we need to just kind of like establish that that approval part, or do you think the motion is just fine?
I think in this case, because the risk is low, that the motion today is fine. In the future, you may want to start adding those findings as it
Adding
relates
detail.
to those
Okay.
subsection C. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or concerns? Were you satisfied with that? Okay. All right, Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote on this motion, please?
Sure. Commissioner Eggenberger?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Okan?
Yes.
Commissioner Singh?
Yes.
Commissioner Watkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Weber?
Yes.
Commissioner Zuber, yes, and Chairman Green.
Yes. Good luck to you.
Thank
Now,
you.
he needs to go next to the township trustees to get their approval, correct?
That's correct. Looking at the calendar ahead, it looks like the next available meeting is probably September 13th.
Good
Thank
luck
you
to
very much. Thank you
All
for having us, and thank you.
Fuck, Doctor. No.
Our next agenda item is the Michigan Schools and Government Credit Union. We're considering a site plan on property located north side of Ford Road between Sheldon and Canton Center, roughly in front of Kohl's. The proposal is to reoccupy the site for a financial institution and make modifications to the site and the building. Patrick, could you give us more on that project?
Sure, thank you. At a previous meeting on July 11th of this year, the Planning Commission had reviewed the plans by Michigan Schools and Government Credit Union, and one of the items in that proposal was to stain the brick and mortar of the building. The Planning Commission did not recommend approval of staining the brick and mortar and deferred action on the application pending submission of revised plans. The applicants have submitted revised plans that omit the staining of the brick and mortar. So the brick and mortar is proposed to retain its previously approved and natural color. Otherwise, the plans are substantially the same as the plans reviewed at the July 11th Planning Commission meeting. All of the comments in our staff report are the same. The glass vestibule is in the front is probably the most major change. I know the Planning Commission reviewed that on July 11th and made comments, so anything in addition, we can go from there. But other than that, the only major change has been the removal of the staining of the brick. So with that, if the Planning Commission is satisfied with the plans presented in the packet this evening, staff recommendation would be approval of the amended site plan for the financial institution use on the subject parcel, subject to lighting and signage items noted by staff being addressed on revised plans. And those are relatively minor things just to ensure compliance with the ordinance, fairly minor things. And signage is done by the Building and Inspection Services Division, so they may not have closure on the signage until they apply for building permits, but if they include a photometric plan, we can tell fairly easily if it'll comply or if additional lighting tweaks are needed.
Thank you, Patrick. Is the project sponsor here and would like to make any additional comments?
Good evening. I was here last month, of course. My name is Mike Blanick with Stuckey by Taylor Architects. So basically, through our discussions with the board, and then we went back, did some price analysis of one of the options was tearing the all brick off and redoing it. That really wasn't, the board at the credit union did not want to go that far with the project, so we're leaving the brick as it is. Everything else is as we presented. The comments are pretty minor. We'll take care of them with our building permit package. And I know the board was okay with our vestibule change by, increasing the light going into the branch and giving it a little bit of a fresh look from the current drive-it and those columns that are on the front that are pretty deteriorated.
Well, thank you for hanging in there with us.
Yep.
I want to hear from the commissioners. Commissioner Singh, any comments or questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Foster.
No questions, but I like this much better.
Commissioner Okan.
I'm good, thank you.
Commissioner Weber.
I'm in agreement with Commissioner Foster.
Commissioner Zuber.
I wasn't here last time, but I like this.
Commissioner Eggenberger.
I agree. I wasn't here to see the bad brick, but I like this brick.
Commissioner Watkins.
No objections, Mr. Chair.
All right, and I have none either. I'm glad you're sticking with us, and, I'm looking forward to this. I think that glass atrium is going to look pretty good, and I would have been okay with the new brick, but real brick. But this I think it's going to look even better. I really do. I think you'll be very happy in Canton on Ford Road. So with that, any motion on this project?
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, go ahead. I'll let someone else do it.
Don't
for a
fight now.
change.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the site plan amendment application for our financial institution use on parcel number 03999002870 at 44530 Ford Road, subject to lighting and signage items noted by staff addressed on the revised site plans.
Support.
Okay, we've got a motion by Commissioner Weber and support by Commissioner Zuber. Any further discussion? Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote on this, please?
Sure. Commissioner Eggenberger.
Yes.
Commissioner Foster.
Yes.
Commissioner Okan.
Yes.
Commissioner Singh.
Yes.
Commissioner Watkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
Commissioner Zuber, yes, and Chairman Green.
That's a yes for me as well, so good luck to
Good
you.
luck.
And,
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
And so it's on to the trustees with that, right?
This is a site plan amendment, and it's a very minor site plan amendment. Most of the items covered are subject to administrative review. The addition of the vestibule was probably the most major thing that staff had referred this to the Planning Commission for. So with the Planning Commission action on those major changes, they're approved as presented.
Oh, so it's even faster for you. Okay.
Good job.
We'll be probably next week with the building permit. Thank you.
All right, fantastic.
It's fast.
All right, our next agenda item is Redwood at Marketplace. We're considering also a site plan for property located on the north side of Michigan Avenue, on both sides of Morton Taylor. Proposed use is a multifamily residential use. Patrick, could you give us more?
Yes, thank you. Let me just bring up the plans here. This will just take a moment to bring up the site plan, but just to get started, this is an item that has appeared before the Planning Commission and before the Board of Trustees a number of times, starting with a few years ago when the item first came up for conditional rezoning. The item has gone through a conditional rezoning that includes many elements that are on the site plan this evening. After conditional rezoning, the site went through the preliminary plan developments review. It also went through the final plan development review after. So now we're at the final phase, which is the site plan review. And the proposal is to construct 235 single-story apartments on 48 acres, which is a density of 4.9 dwelling units per acre. At the meeting on November 23rd of 2021, the Township Board of Trustees granted final plan development approval for a mixed-use development of 235 single-story apartments on 48 acres and up to 77,940 square feet of commercial on 14.37 acres on the north side of Michigan Avenue along both sides of Morton Taylor Road. The site plan this evening is just for the Redwood, the 235 residential units. The commercial development, which is south of Redwood and adjacent to the frontage of Michigan Avenue, the future commercial will be before the township on a different site plan application sometime in the future. We're not working on any site plans right now, so I don't really know what the future holds for which tenants and how it's going to look. But that area south of Redwood, between Redwood and Michigan Avenue, is basically blank on the site plan because it's reserved for that future commercial. The residential portion will include two phases. Phase one will be west of Morton Taylor Road, and phase two will be east of Morton Taylor Road. Morton Taylor Road will be paved farther north of the northern entrance, and there's also a little bit of paving that goes across the west side of Morton Taylor Road near the drive entry to the park. With the plan development, every plan development is required to demonstrate definite benefits to the community pursuant to the zoning ordinance. And when the plan development was reviewed and approved, the significant definite benefits were first, preserving over 26 acres of open space, which is 44.8% of the site. That exceeds the minimum open space requirements of 25% for a PD. And between preliminary plan development and final plan development, that open space preservation had actually increased based on tighter clustering and more preservation of natural features. Another definite benefit was the preservation of regulated wetlands and densely wooded areas as a result. Another definite benefit was installing a sidewalk network that will allow pedestrian access throughout the development, including between residential uses, commercial uses, and the Lower Rouge Trail, which is northwest of the project site. The internal drives have sidewalks on both sides, so there's a lot of pedestrian access and connectivity. And finally, another definite benefit was paving a Morton Taylor Road adjacent to the site. Our staff review identifies a number of different elements of the plan design, and the plan is substantially similar to the final plan development plan that was approved last November. The schedule of modifications are the same as the layout plan that was approved. There have been mostly minor tweaks in terms of some minor locations based on natural features and based on some engineering elements, but nothing that is outside the bounds of what was approved on the final PD. The architecture was approved at the final PD review, where the applicants had shown greater than or at least 50% masonry on the buildings, which it would be either stone or brick on the buildings, and they've included the design elements that have been required by the township. With the natural features and the landscaping, the site includes a full landscape plan that's designed to comply with the zoning ordinance. There are a lot of landscape requirements that have to be met, and the project achieves the landscaping requirements for all the elements, which include frontage landscaping along Morton Taylor Road, the unit landscaping that's required for each individual unit based on a certain number of trees and shrubs per unit, landscaping along the detention ponds, and finally, a buffer landscaping along the adjacent residential and commercial properties. So the site is very densely landscaped. There are actually more trees being planted than there are being removed. And the applicants have submitted a natural features evaluation of the site that describe the initial natural features inventory and review of the quality of the areas, and showing the areas of impact and the areas of preservation based on that evaluation. And the last thing I'll just mention is that with the plan development agreement that has been approved by the township board, the applicants and the township were still coordinating some minor language in the plan development agreement regarding private drive construction standards. The township and Redwood are in general agreement on the design, and that drive design is on the site plans, so we're in agreement on the design that is on the plans before you this evening. We're just working through some language in the PD agreement. Once we come to an agreement on the drive design language in the PD agreement, we'll report back to the Planning Commission and the Township Board on those minor text changes in accordance with the zoning ordinance requirement on minor text changes. So with that, our staff recommendation is approval of the site plan as provided in the plan documents, subject to compliance with the sign regulations of the zoning ordinance and compliance with all state, county, and township requirements, including Mdap and Eagle. And the last thing I'll note is with the signage, it looks like one of the signs may be more than what the zoning ordinance allows for signage. As I noted in a previous case, we don't know what the signage is until the building division reviews it, but we review the signage on a preliminary basis, and it looks like there may be more signage there than what's required by the zoning ordinance. So we have that condition that it would have to comply with the zoning ordinance for the sign, or by complying with the zoning ordinance, they can either reduce the signage to comply with the ordinance, they can apply for a variance, or they can apply for a minor PD amendment. That's something the applicants would have to decide what to do on their end. But our recommended condition is subject to compliance with the sign regulations of the zoning ordinance, and then those options are available to the applicant to choose how they would want to proceed under the ordinance. So with that, that concludes our report, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Patrick. Is the project representative here for this project? Come on up. Welcome.
You. Hello, I'm Kelly McIver with Redwood. We are comfortable with the conditions. We were excited to present a site plan that was compliant with the final PUD, the final PD, and you can tell from Patrick's presentation that it's a very complicated project with a lot of moving parts, and I have certainly appreciated the time and attention that Patrick and the engineering team as well have given to our project, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you very much. Let's start out down at this end. Commissioner Singh?
No questions.
Commissioner Foster?
I don't have any questions either.
Commissioner Okan?
Question, Patrick. When you have a large development like this, with 250-some units and with buildings on both sides of the street and the width of the units not very wide, driveways might only be able to handle a couple cars. I noticed we have a few areas in here in this development for I call it like pocket parking, basically. But is there a calculation, or I'm just thinking, when you have this many units, and if somebody has a gathering or something's going on at one of the units, there's just really no place to park on the streets because the driveways are so close to each other. Is there like a standard calculation that any of the institutes have that kind of give a recommendation for these pocket parking spots?
Yes. The zoning ordinance has a requirement for attached residential or multifamily. They have to have 2 parking spaces for every unit, plus 20% for guest parking. So typically, what we may see are 2 parking spaces for every unit, and then that guest parking is dispersed throughout the development. In this case, there's actually 4 spaces per unit because they each have 2-car garages, and the driveways are 22 feet long, which allow for parking of 2 cars. So if they can get 2 cars in the garage as it's designed, plus 2 cars in the driveway, that alone exceeds the minimum number of parking for the site. By the letter of the ordinance, they wouldn't be required to put in those pocket parking areas, but they're a good idea to add, like you said, if there's a gathering and you have a few people over and there's a few cars, those would be areas where people could park. Beyond that, if those were full, I think that they may need to get permission from their neighbors, because even though the drives are 27 feet wide, which are technically wide enough to have parking on one side, I don't believe that Redwood will be allowing on-street parking.
Okay. Yeah, I just think it's just something that we maybe, when we're bored and we have nothing to do, we should look into something like that. It's just again, it just seems like it's just, they meet the ordinance. I have no problem with it, but it's a lot of units with no place to park.
There's going to be just room for parking on one side of each street, correct?
They're not proposing on-street parking here. Technically, they could, because the roads are wide enough. They have to be 27 feet wide to allow parking on one side, but because it's a private drive, the owner can choose not to have on-street parking, and this one I don't believe will have on-street parking. And I think in part because the driveways are so close together, it's really hard to fit it anywhere, among probably other reasons.
Okay. So basically, it's just a big fire lane. You get right down to it. Okay. Commissioner Weber?
So following up on that, then, if you're not allowing on-street parking, will there be signage to say that no parking is not allowed on the street? Because people will do it if there's no signs.
So there is parking. There are no parking signs on the private drive aisles. It's also contained in the body of the lease that if you park on the street, we will tow you or have you towed.
I'm familiar with your development down in Brownstown, and it looks very nice, but it's also very wide open as far as landscaping or lack of goes. I know there's a landscape plan that needs to go here, but obviously you'll be clearing most of this land. Will it look appreciably like the one in Brownstown, or would there be a little more I'll call it shade, or is it just so the sun's not beating down on these places all day long and such. Like I said, I'm looking at the aerial right now of your development in Brownstown, and the morning sun is like beating right on those places. So that's my question. Is it?
So Redwood's landscape standard is the greater, or what we will put on our landscape plan is the greater of Redwood's landscape standard or what the municipality we're in requires. And generally, Redwood's landscape standard is lusher than the municipalities, but I think in Canton's case, Canton's is actually lusher. So you're going to see more than you would see in Brownstown first. Second, we're removing trees, but as Patrick mentioned, we're actually replacing more trees than we're removing, and we're preserving an additional 898 trees. And then if you look on the west side of Morton Taylor, every place where we're not developing there can you pull it over a little bit? These are all very sensitive wetlands that we're not getting into any of that at all. So there's going to be a lot of trees in that area as well.
That was going to be my follow-up question, is where you stand with the approvals and such that you need to get from the county and Eagle.
So we have our Eagle wetland draft permit. We have a large mitigation requirement. We're going to fund that through our loan closing, and we can't pull the permit until we fund the mitigation. So we have the draft permit, and Eagle is aware that we're waiting until we close to fund that. We also have reserved the wetland credits, so we know that they're there when we're ready. We have submitted to the county and received a second set of comments back from the county on storm and road. I don't think on soil erosion control, but we're waiting for our first round of engineering comments from the township until we respond again to make sure that we're not doing redundant work. We did send our first engineering application to the township last week, the application form and the engineer's estimate, because we have to agree on what the fee is. It's a hefty review fee. We also have our Mdap draft permit already. We can't pull the permit till we post the bond for the work and our contractor posts the bond. We won't engage a contractor till we're closer to closing, which will happen when we're closing to engineering approval. So we're all lined up. We're just waiting for all the dominoes to fall, so to speak.
When would you anticipate starting construction down here?
My gosh, as fast as I can get through township
I
approval in the
understand
county.
that, but what's realistic?
I'm hoping for November this year, but if we can't clear this year, if we can't pave this year, obviously we won't pave over the winter. I'm hoping that we're able to move quickly through the township. The county is on its own schedule.
Thank you, and no other questions.
To Commissioner Weber's point, I was glad to hear in Patrick's outline that you are going to actually plant more trees than you're going to be taking out. But I want to ask Patrick, unless I missed it, the very extensive tree survey that was provided here doesn't illustrate the trees that are coming out, that are going to be removed for this project. Is that something that we can kind of count on for future projects? Because I would like to know when we get a project like this, what the total is. I don't have to know specifically each and every tree, but just a number diagnosis of what's going to be removed. That's just the point that I'd like to make for staffing.
Yeah, they have an extensive tree survey, so they have complied with providing the data necessary for the tree survey, the tree inventory, because we still do require the tree survey. We do require the natural features impact, in addition to the things that we've always done of trying to minimize the development footprint, try to maximize that preservation of natural features and open space. On this site, this picture here, this is the west side of Morton Taylor Road, and the red trees, each red area, it's a corresponding tree and number that goes to an inventory. That's the size, species, condition of a tree. The red ones are the ones proposed to be removed, and the white ones are the ones preserved to remain. So, for example, this red dot in the middle, that's a stormwater pond. That's something that they have to do. But beyond those things that they have to do, they've tried to minimize the clearing and preserve a lot of those trees. So
I guess what I'm getting at is, can we have a summary on a project like this in the future that says there are 160 trees on the site, we're going to remove 8. That's all I would need to see.
Okay. Yeah, we've done some of the calculations. When we had this, we reviewed it as staff, and we had gone through one by one all 1,000 plus types of trees, and we did calculate that there are 1,265 regulated trees proposed for removal, and there's 1,275 trees proposed to be planted, in addition to all the shrubs, which is just under 2,000 shrubs that are going to be planted as well. And when we looked at what was being cleared and then built, and all the trees that were being put in there, there were very few spots remaining on the site, according to the landscape plan, where there's additional room to plant any more trees, just because the development footprint has been as low as possible. And with meeting all the landscape standards, which are pretty high for multifamily development, they've really packed in as many trees as possible.
And to Commissioner Weber's point, so we're actually going to have shade in this project. We just have to wait for all those new trees to mature, right?
Yes.
I'm messing with you.
Although, I'm from Ohio, but I spent a lot of time in Michigan, and any sunny day is like, okay. But yes, that would be shade.
Okay, the other question I have has to do with paving of Morton Taylor. Morton Taylor will be paved beyond where the trail area begins, right? It'll be because of the project on the east side. It's got to extend at least that far with pavement and probably sidewalks.
Yeah, I can bring up the site plan here overall just to kind of illustrate where. So here's the northernmost entrance. So on the east side of Morton Taylor Road, here's the northernmost entrance, and then a little farther north of that, there's a T turnaround.
Okay.
And then here is the drive into the Lower Rouge Park.
Right. Okay.
And some of that will be reoriented based on the locations of the roads, but this is as far as Morton Taylor will be.
Okay, and there will be sidewalk on the east side. Will there be sidewalk on both sides?
It'll be on the east side only. Some of this property Redwood doesn't own. But there is some proposed sidewalk along their frontage on the west side. So Redwood's frontage on the west side will have the sidewalk there. But
where there's private property, there will not. There'll be a gap.
Right, and there may be a mix of private and public property, so that would require some coordination with adjacent landowners. And it looks like there's a little bit of that wetland that comes up almost to the boundary. So there'd be a little bit of coordination to try to get that to continue up along the west side.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Zuber, do you have any comments or concerns?
Oh, I have some comments and questions. First of all, I noticed that there's a Capewood model that there's no floor plan for in our packet, so I was just curious. We're missing that.
I think it was presented as part of the PD and part of the original
Okay.
materials, but I'm happy to send it over. It's not a secret. I'm happy to share it.
That's why I was curious about. Is it a secret?
No, it's not new, so it's,
Yeah. Okay. I just didn't remember from the last time. And then I have a question about the front entries. I just don't, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with the PDF here. I'm never crazy about developments where we just see garages sticking out, and I probably commented this the first time we saw this. But is there any way that the front entrances can be a little bit more prominent or a little bit less of an afterthought in these?
So I would not call the front entrances an afterthought. The product that we have, our homes are very, we spend a lot of time on developing them and working on them and refining them so that we can build an attractive neighborhood that will attract residents and that will thrive. We did work with, when Mr. Goulet was the planner, we worked with him, and he was very specific about where he thought those front porch homes would go. So you see them along the detention pond, kind of facing out into the commercial to give that front porch feel as you're driving by through that commercial and to connect the two portions of the mixed-use neighborhood. And then the same for where they're on the east side. So There are some other complications with changing them at this point because they require a different drive access. So then you're putting more cement and more drive in a site that's already pretty tight. And I'm very concerned about creating more wetland impacts, more permeable surface, those sorts of things. This is the plan this is the home mix and the layout that was presented and approved as part of the final PD. So we're presenting something that is in compliance with that in terms of the homes.
Then on page 88 in this packet, Patrick, that the side of the Breezewood unit, and there's several units that show a similar brick and stone together. I'm not crazy about, I guess it's page 88 of the packet itself. Yeah, there you keep going. That one. The red brick and the stone, I'm just not. I hope that's the rendering.
We can work with staff on the different color or types there. That's
Okay.
just an example to show the percentage of stone. I'm not tied to this. We're not tied to
Okay,
this specific color.
Because that was a little garish, but, okay, that's all I have. Thank you. What do I think about the roofs? Well, didn't we talk about that last time?
Not a roof.
Commissioner Eggenberger.
There's no Victorians here, Don.
No, that's true. Yes, I am dead. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate what everyone has brought up in terms of the different thoughts about what's going on with this and some things that I hadn't realized. Could you just remind me, Patrick, last time I feel like we met, we talked about the wetlands and trying to make sure that they weren't using up a lot of them, and was that what went to Eagle and trying to figure out what was going to happen with that? Am I remembering that correctly?
I do know that at preliminary PD review, there were many of these areas, that were on the west side of Morton Taylor Road, and up in this northeastern area, these were proposed to all have units on the preliminary PD plan. And when, between preliminary PD and final PD, there's reasons for the applicant to not want to disturb these wetlands, and certainly reasons for the township to not want to see them disturbed either. So when we came back to the final plan development review, they proposed a layout like this where they clustered the units tighter, so there were some additional modifications granted for having the units closer together and having the separation distances closer. And one of the rationales for that is that really they're impacting themselves by the closer units. They're not impacting neighbors or anyone else. And as a result, we get a lot more open space, a lot more tree preservation, a lot more wetland preservation. So that was something that there was quite a lag between preliminary and final in that regard, and part of it was the pandemic, and part of it was going through some of this permitting, because once they had that final PD approved, they were going to design site plans based on that and do county and state permits accordingly. So what they've presented here is substantially similar to the final PD review, where they did show that additional preservation.
Great, thank you. I'm glad to hear we were able to preserve more of it.
Commissioner Watkins?
Real quick, so I don't have questions on the residential portion, but more so on the commercial that hits the Michigan Avenue frontage. Is there anything you can share about the phasing? I saw that, excuse me, phase one is west of Morton Taylor, or at least that's the first part of the residential. The second part will be east of. Anything about, it looks like the commercial on the east side of Morton Taylor is like phase 7 through 9, and I don't see anything about the commercial on the west side. If you could share some details.
I can only speak to the residential portion, but our representative, our seller is here. Our seller is retaining the commercial
Great,
portion
thank you so
development
much.
itself. So.
Thanks, Kelly. Good evening. My name is John Gaber. I'm the attorney for the current property owners who are selling to Redwood and retaining the commercial portion for development in the future. The commercial development is, I believe you've seen the PD agreement. It's proposed to be in several phases. Each proposed building site essentially is its own phase, because we don't know at this point in time how it's going to develop, which will be the most desirable sites, which potential tenants and occupants will come forward. In terms of the status, what what we mentioned during the PD process, and I guess I'll reiterate it here, essentially it's a process. I mean, there's really no market and no motivation for anybody to pursue the commercial here until the residential is at least established, until there's a shovel in the ground. Because you don't get any momentum, you don't get any interest because there's nothing surrounding it. So what the plan is, we've talked to certain brokerage firms, and we're ready to turn around and list this. As soon as Redwood closes, essentially moves forward and puts a shovel in the ground, the commercial property will be listed, and we'll be able to move forward with, hopefully with that development as soon as possible. But that's what the intent is.
And follow up, and that's on both sides of Morton Taylor. You're talking east and west, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then lastly, I guess, as we start to talk about that, we're going to wait for site selectors to do their thing immediately after Redwood, or is there like something, is there anything that's joining the residential to commercial by way of any agreement at all that we should know about?
Well, there's the PD agreement, and then there's also in the PD agreement, as you know, there's a lot of common areas. There are roadways, sidewalks, landscaping, detention areas, and such that are common between the two, that coordinate the two sites and make it into a consistent development that works together with residential and commercial components. So we've got that, and we also have, as one of the conditions, the requirements in the PD agreement, is there's going to be a reciprocal easement agreement between the two sites, and the reciprocal easement agreement is going to provide for, for easements for these things. It's going to provide for, who maintains, who pays, the relative shares and such. So all of that has to be done as a requirement of the PD agreement, and that'll kind of establish the, the boundaries and the operation between the commercial and the residential.
That works for me.
Okay. Real quickly, and without divulging any details, is there still an ongoing acquisition attempt for those parcels that are not part of the project?
My clients keep trying to do that periodically. They revisit the issue, but either and there are a few parcels that fall into that category, either there's no interest or the pricing is just astronomical.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that that's got to impose a few challenges if you were going forward.
Yes, sir.
With a design. Just one quick question in terms of the residential, though. Is there anything going to be done to differentiate from one unit to another, anything at all, or are they all going to be exactly the same, including the garage doors, the color of the brick, et cetera, et cetera? Is it going to basically be uniform throughout?
So there are a couple different ways we could differentiate the homes here. We have different unit types or different home types next to each other in some places, and then we can differentiate the color of the stone and the brick as it goes through. The garage doors are all the same garage door with the upgraded windows and carriage details, but there's some differentiation we can do there. Additionally, there's when we get through engineering, there's some topo issues, and we'll deal with those by putting a step in the building, which will give a raised roof truss. So there'll be a little definition in the roofs as well, in specific locations.
I'm really curious in terms of the demographics of, you said they have a unit in Brownstown? Is there any kind of like defining difference in demographics, age groups, or anything that this design appeals to?
It's funny that you say that. So I started in 2014, and we had 800 homes, I think, the year I started. And this year we have 14,000 homes built and leased, and then 2,000 more under construction, and a couple thousand more in the pipeline. So a lot of growth. So every year we've been updating our demographics, because when we come in and introduce ourselves to a municipality, we talk about, 70% of our renters are empty nester. The average age is 51. 60% of our residents come from within a 3-mile radius of the neighborhood that they're in. Here, 1.65 people per building. Here's the traffic you can expect at peak hours. And from 800 homes to 14,000 homes, those statistics have stayed just about the same, which I was really surprised with the traffic. I thought the traffic would change for sure, but no, the traffic has stayed exactly the same at peak hour travel. And It's just a home that's built in a way that attracts a specific type, like we're FHA compliant on our exteriors, or we're ADA compliant on the interiors, like there's no step from the garage into the home, the light switches are at wheelchair level, so just a really nice place to age in place. The difference between Canton and Brownstown is Canton has a higher median income level and can demand more things on their exteriors of their homes. So you'll see that the homes in Brownstown, while they're the same basic types, have a little more siding and different kinds of gingerbread than you would see in the Canton homes. But the people that you find in them are basically the same age of people, the same number of people per homes, the same number of cars per driveway. It's very consistent across our portfolio.
So this is probably not as attractive to, let's say, the young professional as it would be for the senior or the empty nester.
Yes, 70% of our renters are empty nesters. The other 30% tend to be young professionals. We're very popular with people with odd sleep hours, medical personnel, emergency personnel. It is not unusual to find a police car parked in a driveway in our home because they live there, not because of other reasons. Airport personnel, where we're near airports. There's a lot of insulation between the homes, so it's just a quiet place that's very attractive to those sorts of professionals, in our experience.
Okay.
If I could follow up, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Last question. I'll take his question a little bit further because I'm not scared to ask it. Without you giving us everything on your operating pro forma, are you able to give us like a range on the lease cost per square foot between $2, $3, $3.50? Is there an opportunity to talk about what that range looks like?
The cost to build it?
No, lease rate per square foot.
Oh, right now we're performing here at $1.70 a square foot.
Got it. Thank you.
But we will raise them as fast as we can. We have never dropped our rents in the history of Redwood, so we're always looking for the opportunity to raise the rents.
Thank you.
Follow up. To the gentleman that could speak, I got a question about the commercial part of this. Given the demographic that these typically appeal to, you must have some anticipation of the type of businesses you'd be looking for at the commercial, because you said you want to wait till the development actually starts before you start ferreting out what businesses might want to go here. Is that?
Well, a lot of the businesses, service that type of customer base, a residential customer base. So you're looking at, like your fast casual type restaurants, essentially, and your retail, your service retail as well as, sales retail that cater to that type of demographic, because you're going to have, you've got 235 homes there, multiplied by however many people occupy that, and you've got visitors and such. So it generates more traffic, in the area on the, the main highway, and then also in and out of the development. So you're going to look at those type of businesses that cater by and large to this type of customer base.
Could I ask something to that?
Sure.
I know a lot of times commercial users are particularly concerned with rooftops and disposable income. And so we're going to be able to add some rooftops to the neighborhood here. And in terms of disposable income, because most of our residents are empty nesters and they're not paying for travel soccer team and the beater escort that their kid can drive to and from high school, they tend to have a little more disposable income. And with the walkability here, it's really going to drive some of that pedestrian traffic, that real that immediate user hopefully for their commercial use. We're actually very excited to see what goes in there so we can sell it to our residents.
Well, my follow-up was going to be, given its location on Michigan Avenue, there's been a desire for more commercial development on Michigan Avenue, especially along that stretch. My thought is that you probably already have an idea of what types of businesses can go in there, or what types of businesses would be looking to go in a location like that. I guess I'm not totally on board with the fact that you have to wait for the residential piece to get developed before you really start marketing the commercial piece, but you're the expert, I'm not, so just my comment.
To that end, I will say this. You know about Cherry Hill Village, right? Well, Cherry Hill Village is got to be almost done in terms of residential, right, in terms of building it out. And we have a hard time they have a hard time getting support sometimes for some of the local businesses right in Cherry Hill Village. It's not a given that because a residential is right next to the commercial, that means success. But you are moving into a community of 100,000 people. I'm thinking, to Commissioner Weber's point, the right stores will get you the right business. You don't have to wait for the residential to build out, believe me. I think Ford Road will tell you that, in terms of people will, you build it, people will come, to coin a phrase. Anyway, enough said on that. Any further questions, comments, concerns, motions?
I have a motion. I move to recommend approval of the Redwood at Marketplace site plan on tax parcels, I'm not going to read all those, all the ones listed in the model motion, as provided in the plan documents, subject to compliance with the sign regulations of the zoning ordinance and compliance with all state, county, and township requirements, including Mdap and Eagle.
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Singh. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, seeing none. Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote on this, please?
Sure. Commissioner Eggenberger?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Okon?
Yes.
Commissioner Singh?
Yes.
Commissioner Watkins?
Yes, and for the record, I drove a beater escort to high school. Thank you very much.
It's probably a pretty color, though, right?
Dirty gray.
Oh, sorry. Commissioner Weber?
I also drove a beater, but it wasn't an escort. It was thoroughly banged up, though. Yes, I approve.
Commissioner Zuber, I drove a Chevette. And then in college, a Volare.
Wow.
And yes. And Chairman Green?
That's a yes from me. And I'm not going to tell you what I drove. Anyway.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, good luck to you. We're sending our recommendation to the trustees, and we look forward to your project. All right. Okay, let's see. Next agenda item. I will let the room clear. Okay, our next agenda item is not too far down the street from that project. It's the Canton Renewables Upgrade Project. We're considering a site plan, a property located on the south side of Michigan Avenue, east of Lilly. Proposed use is an installation of additional equipment at the existing landfill area. Patrick, could you give us more detail?
Sure, thank you. Canton Renewables is an energy company that operates on the landfill site. It's actually the same parcel as the landfill as a whole. So on the report, the net acres is about 199 acres because that includes the landfill part of the parcel. So Canton Renewables is very much a part of, it's a separate business, but it's very much part of the operation because they can extract the landfill gas and process it. And the applicant can speak more to that, but process it to usable form rather than venting it or burning it off. So, the business is very unique in terms of its location and its operation. What they're proposing to do is to add some additional equipment to the landfill gas recovery facility to improve the extraction and repurposing of the landfill gas. The original site plan was approved in 2011, and there were some amendments proposed and approved in 2013. It's a permitted use in an industrial district. So as a permitted use in an industrial district, the original approval was subject to a staff review. So I don't believe that plan went to the Planning Commission for review. However, this plan is before the Planning Commission because there are a couple of elements to it that require variances. And the ordinance states that even if in an industrial district, if it's a permitted use, if there's anything that is a discretionary decision or requires a variance, it's subject to Planning Commission review. The changes to the site include construction of concrete foundation pads for outdoor equipment and future control center building, installation of skids on the equipment pads and additional equipment known as a thermal oxidizer, which is located south of the building. Construction of noise walls on the northeast and west sides of the site. And finally, construction of a dumpster enclosure, parking spaces, and paving of access drives. The thermal oxidizer, which is located south of the building, that's a piece of equipment that is 60 feet in height, and the maximum height requirement in the general industrial district is 45 feet. So the thermal oxidizer exceeds the maximum height of the district by 15 feet. At the ZBA meeting of April 14th, 2022, the Zoning Board of Appeals granted a variance for the 60-foot-high thermal oxidizer. So that height has been approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and part of the rationale is that it is very unique to the use, it's very essential to the proposed use, and it's a unique piece of property in terms of the landfill and the natural gas extraction facility. So because it's an essential piece of equipment for the intended use and the minimal impact, if any impact on the neighbors of the additional height, that variance was granted. The applicants have applied for another variance, which will be coming up at a special meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals later this month. And this new variance that they've applied for is to have a wall that is 12 to 16 feet in height for noise mitigation. Some of the outdoor equipment does generate noise, and according to the noise study, it may exceed the maximum noise threshold of 70 decibels at the lot lines. Now, even though the adjacent sites are zoned for industrial use, and the impact on the noise is anticipated to be minimal, they still have to comply with the noise standards. And so the applicant has hired a noise consultant expert that has done the noise analysis and has shown the noise contours of the maximum generated by the proposed equipment, and has shown mitigation measures to keep the number of decibels at or below 70 at the lot line, specifically the northern lot line and the western lot line. To do so, Mechanical Acoustical, who is the noise consultant, has recommended a wall height of 12 to 16 feet high of a precast concrete noise barrier along the northeast corner and along the western property line. The maximum wall height allowed by township ordinances is 8 feet, so the height would exceed the ordinance by an additional 8 feet. The applicants have requested a variance to allow the poured or precast concrete wall and having the finishing on the outer walls, so it will have some texture to it. There's a lot of different textures that precast wall companies can do. They can give a stone appearance, which I think is something similar to what the applicants are proposing. So that is something that will be on the Zoning Board of Appeals agenda for August 25th, later this month. Staff's recommendation on the wall height will be approval, and the staff recommendation of approval is based on, similar to the thermal oxidizer, is the uniqueness of the site and the necessary mitigation measures to comply with the noise ordinance based on the use of the site and compliance with the ordinance. So with that, staff's recommendation is approval of the site plan amendment for Canton Renewables, subject to the condition that the applicant receives variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals for the proposed walls, as noted in the staff report, to comply with section 7.02A3 of the zoning ordinance. And the final thing that I'll note is that the recommended motion is based on the obtaining of a variance by the applicant. If for some reason the variance was not granted or a lesser variance was granted, the applicants would have to modify their plans accordingly to comply with the ordinance. So the recommended condition is to obtain a variance for the wall height. If the variance is granted, the condition would be fulfilled. If it's not granted, then the application would most likely return to the Planning Commission, and additional noise mitigation measures would have to be reviewed at that time. So that wraps up the staff report, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Patrick. Is the project sponsor or representative here? Did you care to add anything that Patrick has said?
No, sir, I don't have anything to add.
No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for being here with us tonight. I'm going to go right to the commission. Commissioner Watkins, any comments on this project?
No objections to this project, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Eggenberger.
I also have no objections.
Huber.
I have nothing to say.
Commissioner, what? Commissioner Weber?
I have no questions, thank you.
Commissioner Okan?
Just one question. On the wall height, 12 to 16 feet, I mean, can we just specify 16 feet just to make sure that the decibels are lowered versus, like, I don't understand between the 12 and 16. Why don't we just say 16?
I think 16 is probably the safe route. When we're doing our write-up for the zoning board of appeals for the variance, we're writing it up as 16-foot wall, just so that it's the full 8-foot variance, so that if it's the full 16 feet that they need, they have the variance for it. I don't know under what circumstances they would go lower. I think that would be up to their noise expert in terms of how they model the noise and what would be the minimum wall height necessary to achieve compliance.
So if they build a 12-foot high wall, are we just, do we take measurements, or do we just wait to see if any neighbors complain if they're over the 70 decibels?
Well, they would have to do the wall based on the noise expert's report. So the noise expert has done the report, and they've proposed the wall based on the report. So we would recommend that they comply with the ordinance according to their noise expert. I think when they do that, they'll probably still go out to take readings just to close the loop and make sure that what they've done complies with it. But the planning commission could make a recommendation to have the wall height uniform, and then that would go to the zoning board of appeals.
That seemed to make sense to me.
I would just say 16 feet, just to.
I agree.
Yes.
Quick question along those lines. So if, they build everything and it still does not fully mitigate the noise to the specifications of the ordinance, it says that the applicant suggests doing an additional noise survey and addressing with additional mitigation at that time. My question is two parts. So number one, what type of things could they do at that point? And number two, would that need to come back before the planning commission?
So for the mitigation measures, I don't know what those would be. I think that would be more a question for the applicant and their noise consultant. It may be additional wall area to continue along certain contours. If I can pull up the noise report and then just go to their, here we go. Yeah, so on the western side of it, it looks like it's pretty solid where the decibels will be at 70 at the lot line. If, for example, say farther north of the wall where it shows a little bit 80 decibels, but then it coming down to 70 decibels, and then it's within the lot line there. If, for example, the decibels were to go beyond 70, one mitigation measure may be to extend the wall farther north. I suppose I could say the same for the wall in the northeast corner, where if it was still over 70 decibels, to continue the wall farther west until it complies. And then this part of the wall could perhaps go south, although as it travels farther east, it's interior to the site. We're really concerned about the property to the north and the property to the west.
Commissioner Singh, or that's
No questions. Thank you.
calling everybody? I think I did. I don't think I had anything to say about this. I am in agreement with Commissioner Okan. I think we should just declare it for 16-foot wall and be done with it. Do I hear a motion?
Oh, would you like one?
Right.
I move to approve the site plan amendment for Canton Renewables at 4345 South Lily Road, parcel number 137990013-706, subject to the condition that the applicant receives variances from the ZBA for the proposed walls as noted in the staff report to comply with section 7.02A3 of the zoning ordinance.
Support.
Supported that?
Watkins.
Who did?
Watkins.
Oh, Watkins, okay. We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Watkins. Any further discussion on that motion?
Do we need to specify the 16-foot wall in the motion?
Yes, if the planning commission's going to specify 16 feet, that should be
Okay, you
added
need
to
a
the motion.
Thank you. I will amend my motion to say, this, I'm not sure where to put that, but.
Proposed 16-foot.
Thank you, proposed 16-foot walls. Thank you. Gosh, that was a challenge for me.
All right, we have an amended motion on the floor and
Support again. Thank you.
by Commissioner Watkins. Any further discussion on the amended motion? Hearing none, seeing none, Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote, please?
Sure, Commissioner Eggenberger.
Yes.
Commissioner Foster.
Yes.
Commissioner Okon.
Yes.
Commissioner Singh.
Yes.
Commissioner Watkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
Commissioner Zuber, yes, and Chairman Green.
Aye. Okay, move that one forward to the trustees. Good luck to you. All right? Uh-huh.
This is also one that is with the planning commission as well.
Oh, okay.
Because similar to the previous one, it's under the purview of the planning commission, or it's a staff approval unless it is a modification or something that's a discretionary decision or something that is requiring a variance. And then it's reviewed by planning commission.
Oh, okay. So we get through faster. All right, our fifth agenda item of the evening is the Chase Bank. We're considering a site plan. Actually, what would you call it, a renovation? The proposed use is addition to the existing structure and other site modifications for property located on the south side of Ford Road between Canton Center Road and Sheldon Road. Any further details, Patrick?
Just a few minor comments. They propose to add 590 square feet on the south side of the building. And because of the addition to the rear side, and there are some significant architectural changes, staff will typically defer those to the planning commission, especially when there's a previously approved site plan where there's significant changes to the elevations. So our items are noted in our staff report in terms of the architecture and parking and loading, things of that nature. With the parking, the number of spaces required for banks, the applicant estimates that 66 spaces are required. And based on the floor area, the applicant would be estimating up to 41 employees, which is a lot. So it's a blend of floor area and employees for bank parking. They're probably estimating high on the employee count, but we believe that the parking spaces proposed are sufficient for the parking demand of the site. So we recommend approval of the parking as presented. I don't think there's any modifications or anything that are necessary there. So with that, staff's recommendation is approval of the amended site plan for the financial institution use on the subject parcel, subject to landscaping, lighting, and dumpster enclosure items noted by staff being addressed on revised plans. And similar to one of the previous cases, those are relatively minor things that we can review as staff to make sure they comply before we sign off on their building permits.
Project sponsor here today? Come on up.
Good evening, Chairperson Green and Commissioners. My name is Tim Messick. I work with the Architects Partnership. We are the architect of record for Chase Bank. Appreciate the opportunity tonight to present our project. We are very excited about the refresh to the existing Chase site. This is a legacy branch that Chase has operated for decades, and it's one of their important branches in their portfolio, obviously. They came to us to work with them on some interior upgrades as part of their new banking processes. It's an advice center more so than a transaction center now. So as part of that process, we took a look at the programming for their space and quickly found out that we need a little bit more space for offices and for financial analysts, loan officers, those types of services that are needed in the community. So that's where we took a look at the programming and the added space, the 590 square feet that staff has mentioned, and took a look at the site as a whole. And it will operate much like it does currently, that kind of counterclockwise motion to access the drive-through and those areas. But we've upgraded the landscaping, the parking, like staff had mentioned, the lighting, and then also the building architecture. So not only the interior of the space, but also the exterior to really update it and refresh that building. A lot of the EFS elements we're proposing to be removed and keeping the brick veneer and the existing stone. So those natural materials, we worked with staff early on and again appreciate their efforts to work with us and determine the needs of the township and kind of the direction that this project would be headed. And we're keeping the brick veneer of the existing building and the stone. The storefronts will be replaced. The existing fenestration and openings will remain, but the storefront will be replaced to bring it up to current energy code standards. And then very quickly, we've added the addition, which will be brick veneer to match the existing, but we've detailed it in such a way where it steps back, so you don't have that outside corner to see the difference between materials. We've tried to bring it to an inside corner, create some shadow lines, so that that match will be as close as possible, obviously, but try to meet the as closely as possible to match. And then the drive-through element, again, the EFS or stucco material that exists, we're proposing the aluminum composite panels for that area, which is a high-grade material, has a long life to it, and really take this building and advance it for the next 20 to 30 years is the expectation. Jumping back to the interior of the branch, kind of the starting point was to create the open office front of house area and reimagine that area. So what we've done is we've taken the existing layout where we have the teller line, which was centrally located, obviously the entrance to the west, which is the main entry, the only customer entrance, and we've de-emphasized that teller line. There's still 3 teller spaces. Right now there's 5. And we've created an opportunity for those advice center locations. There's a living room element closer to Ford Road, which creates some activity. There are some booth areas where that's consultation, where it's quick consultation with the bankers. And then we have the offices throughout where we've added. I believe originally there were 12 offices, now we have 15, plus a conference room for virtual capabilities. They have VR conferences and webcasts that now they can bring into the branch and really create this as a branch for the upcoming few decades. So we've reimagined the interior. The back of house area remains much the same. So those cash rooms, the employee lounge, those areas, the restrooms remain much the same, although they'll be upgraded to current accessibility codes and standards. And then the exterior, like I mentioned, upgrading some of the landscaping. We have the opportunity to, as we modify the addition area and put that building in, to create a parking area in back that is much more efficient than what currently exists, create landscaped islands, increase the shrubs, perennials, shade trees, and then ornamental trees to meet current ordinance requirements. We have upgraded the open space and the green space area to become closer to the ordinance requirements. Right now, the site is mostly impervious, yes, and we've increased it from, I'm going to say, roughly 3,000 square feet to the 10,000 plus square feet of pervious area. So we're increasing a lot of the landscaping and sod and shrubs and perennials. With that, we take no exception to staff's recommendations in the report. We look forward to working with staff on the landscaping items, the lighting at the front entrance, and then making sure the dumpster enclosure meets the standards and requirements. So with that, I'm available for any questions and appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here with us tonight. I'm just going to open it up to the floor in general of the commission. Anybody have any comments or concerns after looking at the packet with these changes?
Just one, Mr. Chairman. I saw the expansion was 850 on the plan, and it had 590 in the report. I don't know which one was correct.
Oh, okay, I think, go back up to the plan here. Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe that was a typo. It had 590.
I'm
I like
looking
that.
at, the developer's plan is listed it as an 850 square foot. Maybe you can help us with, yeah.
The actual footprint, the outside footprint, we calculated at 850, so we believe that's an accurate number and very close to what we'll end up with.
Got it. Just for the record, I'm kind of surprised to see expansion of real property with banks. I've seen, most developments, I've seen them shrink their size, but I'm happy that they're expanding in Canton, so thank you.
I think it makes sense to make offices.
Anybody else?
instead of townhomes.
Have any comments?
Just one quick question. First of all, I'm glad to see the refresh of the building. Maybe you're not the person to answer this question, but it's kind of touching on what Commissioner Watkins just mentioned about banks shrinking their size. But not only are they shrinking their size, but we see a lot of banking facilities closing up.
Absolutely.
Is the reason for that mergers and acquisitions, or is it more people are going to online banking? Is that really what the
Yeah,
driving
so,
that?
so what we're finding is the quantity of transactions are decreasing at the facilities, at the bricks and mortar facilities. So the ATM hits, the walk-up ATMs, if you have some in the vestibule, and then absolutely the teller line transactions are decreasing. So that's where the teller line has gone from 5-person at this location to, we're proposing a 3-person teller line. And truth be told, many times it'll just be 1 or 2, depending on demand and needs. We have scrims that come down, so it actually looks like a wall that's there until the need is, where they open the scrim up for that need. Like I mentioned, it's going to kind of an advice center. So we're seeing the hub and spoke where you have the main flagship locations, and then you have the outlying locations that will feed to those financial analysts, loan officers, and those individuals. So it's longer meetings with individuals, more planning involved, and less about the transactions where it's just getting the cash or turning coins in. Those are net negative from a cost perspective. So it's really reimagining how they're doing business. And then the online component, absolutely, the employees will steer individuals to utilize those services, actually. It's more efficient overall. And same thing with the ATMs. We have 2 drive-up ATMs in addition to 3 VAT units. The VATs are going away, but we see a need here to maintain those because of the transaction hits. And the ATMs, a lot of what the customers need can be done at the ATM nowadays, or on your phone. So it's really the advice center that is the new model proceeding forward.
I'm excited because I was looking at I drive by this almost every day, but I was looking at the Google Street View to refresh my memory of what this building looks like. Oh my God. I will be thrilled not to see those lights in the gable end above the front entry door.
Yeah, it's really reimagining the parapet and, getting away from the peak and
Yeah. No, it's going to
parapet
look
and
really
massing.
nice. Yeah. Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I would like to thank you for doing this as well. Not to hold this project up, but there is an issue that I would like you to look at for the future. Do you realize that your drive coming off of Ford Road is used as a pass-through to go to the sites to your south, whether it be Meyer or whether it be any of the other the restaurants that are going through there? My suggestion is that cut at the south side be moved. At some point in time, jogged over enough to discourage the drive-through coming from Ford Road, because that's an increasing safety hazard. People who don't want to go all the way to the light at Canton Center have seen that opportunity and have taken it at a point. which is just adding to the Ford Road confusion. And in MDOT's infinite wisdom, they're not going that far with the new boulevard, down there. So that's a potential change that would be good for Canton, I think, to have that opening in your back lot and the south side moved over slightly. You might want to take a look at that. But otherwise, I think it's going to be good for Canton that you're making these changes. I like that, the fact that that bank's been here a long time, and it's willing to upgrade, so I'm all for it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Sure can.
Thank you. I move to approve the site plan amendment application for the financial institution use on parcel number 058-99-0003-009 at 45345 Ford Road, subject to landscaping, lighting, and dumpster enclosure items noted by staff being addressed on revised plans.
Support. Oops, didn't mean to get so close.
Supported that.
Oh, good. Supported that? Perfect. Okay, we've got to come up, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Eggenberger. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, seeing none. Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote on that, please?
Sure. Commissioner Eggenberger.
Yes.
Commissioner Foster.
Yes.
Commissioner Okan.
Yes.
Commissioner Singh.
Yes.
Commissioner Watkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
Commissioner Zuber, yes, and Chairman Green.
That's a yes from me as well. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Does that one have to go to the trustees?
Nope, this is a modification of a plan. A lot of these are administrative, but because of the significance of the changes, they go to
They
planning
came to us
commission.
first. Okay, all right. Good luck to you. At this point in time, we're opening the floor for public comment.
We did that already.
Well, I know, I thought I'd do it again, because actually I made a mistake, because that was a public hearing that I was reading, and that was actually for the first project. But we'll just officially make public comment.
Does your son want to make a comment? Commissioner Watkins?
All set.
Huh? No, what, nobody's going to make any public comment? No? Okay. All right. We've done with that one. Reports and discussions. Nothing from staff? Anything that we should be thinking about?
Nothing new. We have our master plan report,
I
but
was gonna
just
ask
a
if
couple
you
of
wanted
minor
to do that.
updates.
Okay.
Thank you for that information.
Yeah,
That was interesting.
I found some of the information interesting on it, comments about not utilizing the residential area, not using the first floor on Cherry Hill for residential and putting businesses in there.
Yeah, we've had
I
some
feel like
comments that
saying,
have taken notice of
We've
that.
tried, that was the whole idea of Cherry Hill Village. Nobody wanted to do it.
I wonder if the market coming to Cherry Hill Village will change that perspective.
I hope so. I hope that it goes back to its original intent of ground floor retail and services and residential on the upper stories. I do think there is the market demand there based on the rooftops and based on the purchasing power and based on what we know that folks in Cherry Hill Village are spending outside of Cherry Hill Village. So we hope to see that turn as well, to go back to the original intent of the development.
Other project sponsor for the marketplace, it's like, what are you waiting for residential for? Cherry Hill
Doesn't
Village,
work, yeah.
Cherry Hill Village could have supported so many coffee shops and other places, along Cherry Hill Road, and they didn't. And those places had to move. It's,
Yeah,
being on Michigan Avenue and 100,000 people, I think, is enough if you got the right stores.
exactly.
Nothing else for the master plan, just more events where you can get surveys done and so on and so forth coming up?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, the advisory board?
We're still working through that, so nothing new since the last meeting. Hopefully this month we'll have something.
Any thoughts as to the gathering together in terms of like the trustees, the planning commission, and the advisory board when it has been filled? How that's gonna, how we're gonna communicate?
Yeah, once we start having our advisory board meetings, we'll kind of get a flow between the advisory board meetings and what comes out of those in terms of notes and comments to the planning commission and to the board of trustees. So a lot of that will come through with monthly reports. I think those monthly reports will be a lot more detailed, and I think that'll be one of the major things that we hang our hat on in terms of communication between all three bodies and making sure that what needs to be documented is documented, so that even if the three bodies are not having joint meetings as frequent as, we think they could, that monthly report is a good way to communicate through bodies without having to meet.
Yes.
I'd like to move that we close the meeting. I'm just freezing.
Like to adjourn?
I would like to adjourn.
Support.
All right. We have a motion on the floor to adjourn, and all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, folks.
Hey, Patrick.